Welcome to Sachs Realty's Tuesday Night Podcast, where we talk about anything and everything real estate. Each week, we deliver expert information enabling you to make better informed decisions while keeping more money in your pocket. If you're interested in real estate, this is your show. Hey guys, welcome. We're going to blow the doors off this thing tonight. We've got a great show lined up. I can already tell with the comments that are coming in, the chatter on the right side of the screen. You guys are ready. So see what we got here. Tonight we have a special guest. Melissa, I'll let you introduce him.
Yeah, we are in a little bit of a different setup this evening, little hiccup at the office today, but we're happy to be here with all of you tonight. And we've got mortgage expert local in the area here to Maryland, Paul Malstrom. Thank you so much for being on with us tonight.
Great to be here.
Paul, absolutely. I think you have me beat. Paul has me beat. It's for the amount of time in the, I'm not saying that you're older than me or anything, man, but I mean, you got a jacket on. I mean, the heat must be low in the house, man. I don't know. Let's tell everybody who you are, man. And you've been in the business for what, 50 years?
Oh, come on. I'm not that old, am I? Maybe these glasses make me look old. Let me take these off. I don't need to read anything. I can speak right from the heart. I've been in the business. I'm actually finishing up my 40th year in the real estate industry. I started out in 1984 selling houses, just like you do, and did that for a couple of years, and then transitioned over into residential mortgage sales, which I've done since January of 1986. So it's been a long, long road. It's been a lot of fun. I've met lots of great people and met and helped many, many homeowners over the years. So I'm looking forward to what tonight brings to us.
Well, I needed you to be on the show. I mean, your experience, that's what we needed tonight, because I graduated high school in 1986. So, I mean, you got me beat by only a couple years, but no, it's a pleasure to be here with you. And I think the audience is going to love you, Paul, because there's a lot of cheerleading going on. And one of the things that I love about you the most is you're realistic, you're knowledgeable, you understand the market, probably on the mortgage side better than anyone that I know, just about, right? So it's exciting. One of the things that's really frustrating for me is to see an article. I am constantly scouring information, diving for data. Obviously, we're trying to, predict. I mean, I have a real estate company to navigate. I have an audience that is demanding answers, and a lot of people are standing around saying, who do I believe? What side? I mean, we hear so much garbage, depending on what the agenda is that's being shoveled. The garbage out there that really, unfortunately, most people, they don't dive deeper than that. They just take what they hear on a mainstream, media article or news flash. And one that really burned me up, and why I wanted you to come on, and we're going to dive into it deep shortly. I want to go over some other headlines that are really we need to talk about. The Fed tomorrow, CPI numbers that just came out, shelter inflation, what's happening with the rental market across the country, prices, home prices. But really, I saw an article that said, with the rates dipping, mortgage interest rates they're referring to, that there was a flood of refinance, and that these people that were refinancing were saving an average of $100 a month. And they were making this seem like, hurry up, guys, run out and refinance your house, your mortgage. And of course, they didn't tell you in the article just how much it costs to refinance. It's going to cost you $7,000 to refinance, but you're going to save $100 a month, and all the other things that go along with it. So I do want to dive into it, but let's kind of, guys, we want your comments tonight. If you have a mortgage comment, and Paul's information is in the show notes. He is on our referral network. I think you're licensed in every state, aren't you, Paul?
We can lend in all but four states.
That's just about every one of them. So yeah, so you guys have to check them out. But let's talk about the Fed. Paul, what do you think? What's the Fed going to do tomorrow?
I'd be shocked if they did anything at all other than just retain current policy. But I'll say one thing about the Fed. I think people are starting to pay a little bit less attention to Jerome speak. Higher for longer. Well, I've seen a few instances because I follow this market, very much every day like you do. And I pay attention to not only what the bond market does in reaction to Fed meetings and Fed comments and governors from Atlanta or from wherever that make comments about what's going to happen or what's not going to happen. But it seems like there have been a little mini rallies in the 10-year Treasury, despite the fact that Jerome Powell has been saying, there's still, we may raise again, and the market seems to be sort of just taking up. Yeah. Okay, sure, Jay, but we're not buying it. We're starting to see rates dropping on the Treasury. We're starting to see continued growth in the equity markets. While there's some really strange headwinds and sidewinds, I think, anyway, long answer to a short question. I don't think the Fed's going to move tomorrow.
Yeah, I think not only will he hold tomorrow in his announcement, but I think that he's going to be pounding home the higher for longer narrative that Wall Street doesn't want to hear. I think everyone is thinking on Wall Street that in the first quarter of 24 that that we'll see rate drops. And the CPI numbers are still high. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But Melissa, what do you think? You think Powell's going to keep interest rates where they are?
Oh, I think so. I think that this is, especially given the time of year it is, I think that we're just going to stay where we are right now. I don't see much of a change of everything. And I think people are, as you had mentioned, kind of tuning it out. It's just becoming something that really, I think everyone's over it. I think everyone's over hearing about the Fed. What's the Fed going to do? And I think that, they're just going to stay for now. That's what I think.
Yeah. And as we get into the show tonight, we're going to talk. Last week, and actually the last couple of podcasts, you all have heard me talk about, I think it's Too Little Too Late. Our show last week, Tuesday night podcast, we had Melody right on. We were talking about, my prediction is that I think the only thing right now, if we do see mortgage interest rates dropping, and they are dropping, they're somewhere in the low sevens right now. I think what we'll ultimately see here is that I think we'll see sellers as the mortgage rates drop. I think we'll see sellers thinking it's their opportunity to sell. And, and I'll support why I think that, throughout tonight's show. But what's happened right now is with the sellers, so little inventories on the market, but we have new home construction inventory that is really high. We're talking about decades high inventory. We'll show you some charts on that. And the applications, the permits to build is up. And so not only are we looking at high active inventory right now, over 7 months supply of new home construction. When you're looking at last year's numbers, we almost have 3/4 of a year of new home inventory on the market right now. That's not counting the new, groundbreaking that's happening, the new permits that have been pulled and that are in the application process. So we're going to see a massive surge of new home construction. People aren't buying them. In October, we saw some of the lowest sales numbers, pricing dropped over 15% in October, new home construction across the country on average. year-over-year decline. And what I want to tell everybody that's important here is that lower rates didn't work. Not only are we seeing new home builders offering rate buy downs, whether it's a 2-year or a 2-point rate buy down for 30 years or a 2-1 buy down where it's 2% less your first year, 1% less your second year, and it phases in to what your real interest rate is today. These things aren't working, these tactics. And not only that, but they're also giving price reduction incentives and other add-ons for people to try and keep this inventory, this new home construction inventory moving. It's just not, I mean, it's ridiculous. Today I did a video about Charlotte, North Carolina with one of our agents at our network. That'll be coming out. Massive new home construction growth in Charlotte. In fact, the metro area, Charlotte's expecting to decline, and Charlotte has been building, they've been increasing leaps and bounds for the last 10 years, not just since COVID. So I think what's going to happen is we start to see mortgage interest rates drop. I think we're going to see an excessive amount of inventory, but let's kind of dive in. I mean, Paul, what are your thoughts? Any initial thoughts on that?
Well, you're talking about real estate in other parts of the country, and I'm not going to be able to really comment too effectively on that because I'm not following the trends outside of the local area as much as you are. But interesting that you're talking about the buy downs and the 2-1 buy downs, which if your viewers don't know what that is, you just mentioned it, but that's really a 30-year fixed rate. And if the end rate is 7.5, that's what you're paying from day one. What happens is it costs a little under 2.5%, about 2.5 points to give the buyer the payment rate of 5.5 for the first year and the payment rate of 6.5 for the second year. But the loan is amortizing as a 30-year fixed rate at 7.5%. So you're not really saving interest. You're taking money here and you're putting it over here, and it's subsidizing the payment for 2 years. And anybody can do that. That product's been around for as long as I've been in the business. But it's a little bit of a shell game. And I'm kind of glad to hear if you're saying that, buyers aren't kind of falling for that. I'd rather see buyers get a price reduction or get some spiffs, get some extra things thrown in that the builder can do. And the builder is not losing money doing it that way because the builder can do it for a more effective cost than I can as a home buyer. So yeah, give me $30,000 or $40,000 in free incentives to finish the basement and put a nice deck on the back and save me from having to incur that expense a year, 2 years, 5 years from now.
All that's still not working. Go
Paul,
ahead,
that I really liked that you, excuse me for interrupting. I just really liked how you said that you said, if the end rate in that buy down is 7%, that is your 30-year fixed rate. I think that a lot of people are misguided and given just all the information like that. I thought that was a very valid point to make, that really buyers may not have really been pitched that way to them.
Well, I'm a wealth of nerdy knowledge. Okay. Just call me a mortgage geek. I'll take that moniker affectionately.
Let's talk about the CPI. You guys hear about the CPI that was just released, the numbers?
3.1, I think.
3.1.
Yeah.
Let's dive into it a little bit here. So some interesting stuff, man. And they cook this data's kind of baked too. I mean, it's so weird, how they come up with these numbers. And one day we'll have a show just kind of diving into this, but you guys can read between the lines. So November consumer price index for all urban consumers increased 0.1% on a seasonally adjusted basis after being unchanged in October. Over the last 12 months, all items indexed increased 3.1% before seasonal adjustment. And I want to dive in a little bit. Food at home has gone up, and we talk about going out to eat, and quite honestly, and I've said it, I mean, I went out Saturday night to a restaurant at primetime dinner hours around here. It's 6:30, 7 o'clock. Left the restaurant 8 o'clock, and out of 35, 40 tables. I think there were 4 tables, seated, us being one of them. So people aren't going out. I mean, it's ridiculous. I talked to a friend of mine today. I don't know what restaurants are going to do. The price of going out is just so high. But, on the flip side of that, and the food's terrible in a lot of the cases. So, you're paying top dollar for awful food. And in a lot of cases, the service is worse than the food. And that's my experience, and talking to people, a lot of my friends feel the same way. But the crazy part about it is, go out and buy, food at the grocery store and go home and make it with the ingredients you need. And you almost spend more. At least you have a better cooked meal, but it's almost more expensive to buy the stuff at the store and cook it yourself. It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Food up almost 3%. This is really what gets me. I did a podcast on with a guy released Saturday. If you guys haven't seen it, you should cruise over and check it out. It talks about our power grid. And there's a lot of talk right now. I think Barack and Michelle, they released something that, talks about, some things that could be happening, bad things that could happen. It's interesting. But the power grid is really like a topic that people are talking about right now. Pittsburgh was just hacked into. Pittsburgh water supply was just hacked into. They were able to identify that it was hacked. They switched some things around. But I interviewed a guy, David Tice, and it's Grid Down Power Ups, a documentary that he's releasing. This guy, is on a mission to educate people on the vulnerability of our power grid. Honestly, I think YouTube suppressed it. The amount of impressions that we got on the video compared to any other release, and our viewership on it was still very amazing. I mean, they watched a large portion on average of the video, and the comments were very, enlightening to see how many people, kind of agree with this vulnerability, whether it comes from a solar flare taking out our power grid. I just want to talk about it for a second, because out of the couple thousand power, stations that we have 3 main power grids. We have an Eastern grid, a Western grid, and a Texas grid. And this guy, David Tice, lives in Texas, Dallas. And he was affected back in February 2021 when the grid went down. And within 3 days, the grocery store shelves were completely bare. And it was a mess. I mean, we know that it knocked out the, Sherwin-Williams, a big, paint manufacturer in Texas. A lot of the paint manufacturers, the chemicals, the plants, I mean, all the pipes burst. I mean, we had a paint shortage. I mean, that was just one small thing. 250 people died because of it or whatever. But my point is, look at this next line item here, is the electricity. 3.4% increase on electricity, but natural gas declined 10.4%. But yet we want to get rid of natural gas. I mean, I don't know, maybe this video will get suppressed because I'm talking about this, but we want to get rid of natural gas in the houses. We don't want people to cook with natural gas, to heat with natural gas. They want to get rid of fossil fuels. Gas went down 10.4%. Year over year. Electricity went up. I don't know about you all, but I grew up with natural gas in the house. We had standing pilots. They weren't even as safe as the gas appliances that we have in our homes now. And most of the people that like to cook, they prefer gas over electric. Gas heat is also hot over electric too. If you live in cold weather states where 6 months of the year, like in Maryland, you need heat. Right. But natural gas has dropped. We want to get rid of that. Back in the early 1900s, the 18th century, not that long ago, or 19th century, sorry, the 1800s, not that long ago, we didn't have electricity in our houses, but we had gas. We had gas lamps, right? So, we could see with gas, and it wasn't until like 1960 that the houses, most of America, was powered inside the house with electric. So a lot of your parents, if you're my age, your parents, their parents grew up without electricity in a home, but we can't live without it now. So most of the people alive today, it's your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents lived in a house that maybe didn't have electricity, but now we can't live without it. Modern civilization can't live without it. And so anyway, mark that down as one of the rants. Shelter, inflation. This is another one here that gets me, that 6.5%, we're still looking at year-over-year shelter inflation. That's, I don't know. Does that surprise you guys?
Oh, not at all.
No.
Not at all. I mean, that's a combination. That's a amalgamation of rent and mortgage expense, right?
That's primarily rental expense. So it's
Okay.
shelter inflation is calculated as rental inflation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Of course, there's housing services that get bundled up in that too. I guess if you look at the basket of goods, yes, about 40% of all home services make up CPI. So it's a big number. But when they're talking about specifically shelter inflation at 6.5%, they're talking about rental rates. And I've got a chart that we can look at that too.
Okay.
Matter of fact, let's just go ahead and take a look at it. So, and transportation, 10.1%. I don't know if you guys tried to fly lately, but airline costs are up. Prices are really high. Of course, I did maybe I'll get a ticket to go down and see a couple of our buddies in Florida. I did see something with Southwest that if I made 6 stops between here and Florida, I mean, Florida is about a 2-hour flight, but if I make 6 stops and fly halfway around the country, I think I can get a $50 ticket. But anyway, let's take a look at this tradingeconomics.com chart. This is what we were talking about here, Paul, in rental inflation, a 6.5%.
Mm-hmm.
So as we can see, guys, we got pretty high on rental inflation. Joe's circling it there, 6.5%. November's number. It's come down a lot. And a lot of people have said, hey, rents don't go down. They've never gone down in history is what, a lot of the investors are saying. This would be the first time, if rents ever do go down, it would be the first time. Look, let me tell you something. When you have Jay Powell that is putting downward pressure on the rental market, yeah, you can pretty much guarantee that that it's going to happen. Rent declines. Miami rents drop 9.72%. We can look at the capitalist here. .com. This goes on to say the state, man, you're making me seasick here, Joe. 4.84% decrease in the state of Florida. Miami experiencing 9.72% rental drops. And I'll tell you why this is bad. This is bad because nationwide, look at this next article here. Nationwide, are declining rental prices bad news for real estate? And the article goes on to talk about nationwide, there is a decline, an average in September of 0.5%. That doesn't seem like a lot, but what it means is it's not going up. And there were a lot of these, I hate to say this, but a lot of Instagrammers, TikTokers. Is that right? TikTokers? Is that
TikTokers. Sure.
TikTokers?
We can call them that. Yep.
Yeah, they get on, their videos or TikTok and their reels, and they talk about, then they slam the door to the Lamborghini, throw the keys in the pool, or their cell phone in the pool. I don't know, whatever they throw in. Maybe they jump in the pool. But they all say how, get rich investing in real estate. And rental declines, period, don't sound very good to me for a lot of these investors, especially if they, they're saying don't stop buying real estate. So buy in 21, buy in 2020, buy in 21, buy in 22. Buy now, buy every day, because you can't go wrong with rentals. Well, we'll see how they like the repair cost of these rentals, the rising taxes, the rentals, and the rising insurance rates of the rentals, and the tenants not paying them. And here in Maryland and Baltimore, we're going to even give them attorneys when you go to evict these tenants. They're going to get lawyers to go after the landlords to keep them in the house for as long as they can. 7 failure to pays before you can get redemption in your own property. So you got to take them to court 7 times just in order to get your property back when they don't pay your rent, but they give it to you the day at the courthouse, and you can't not take it. You can't say, nope, it's been 4 times. I'm done.
Yeah, well, that goes, I'm going to follow up with that. Like, I don't think people are, if they're going to go down that investment and going to be a landlord, with following the TikTokers, I agree with you that they're not well educated, but this goes along the lines of the short-term rentals as well. Everyone hopped on that bandwagon. They thought it was going to be great to own Airbnb. During COVID, it skyrocketed. So many people decided to go down that investment route. And now I follow a social media Airbnb page, and they are feeling the pain. One person just posted today on there, their revenue for last month was $128. And they're like, what am I doing wrong? And everyone's like, it's not working for you. So there's a lot of that.
I don't understand the model totally. I've booked through Airbnb pretty frequently. I just booked one a couple months down the road, and 2 things were very interesting. One, the price of it had a 50% cost reduction for some reason. I don't know why. The rating was something like 4.9, 200 great reviews. And then beyond that, I could cancel a day before and get a full refund. That's not a smart business plan to me. So are people doing that, or people are getting stiff? So then people are looking for like last minute Airbnbs and getting them for a really, really cheap price. I don't know. Somebody's got to explain it to me, because I'm not seeing the whole picture, I guess.
So a buddy of mine, Luke Smith, he has a real estate channel or a YouTube channel. He's in Canada. Market Mania is his channel. I just podcasted with him for his channel about a week ago. He was in Mexico. And so we talk a lot through social media. And I saw a post like weeks before to where he was in Mexico. So I was like, man, what's up? Like, are you moving to Mexico? Did you buy a condo in Mexico? I mean, you've been in Mexico for weeks. And he said, yeah, I rented an Airbnb for a month for $50 a night. So he's like a 2-bedroom, right on the water, beautiful view out the back patio door, and $50. I mean, they can't be making money, right? So I think we're going to see a lot of this inventory come on the market. And remember what I said, guys, when the interest rates drop, we see mortgage interest rates have a 5 in front of them. And there's a poll, and let's check out the poll. We put a poll. If you guys haven't voted, cruise on over and vote the poll. This is let's see. Poll.
Drum roll, please.
I was podcasting with Joe today with the guy down in North Carolina, and Joe dropped off. I'm like, why aren't my slides popping up? And all of a sudden, he was gone. Anyway, he's like, Jimmy, who I was podcasting with, he said, oh, he dropped off like 15, 20 minutes ago. Then we realized the power went out at the office. First thing I want to know was Melissa did she pay the bill or not? And but she already got in front of that, knew that question was coming, and found out it was a blown transformer or something. I don't know. Maybe it was somebody that watched the video from Saturday on Grid Down. I don't know. Maybe they were like, we're we're going to get these guys at Sachs Realty. We're going to take out their power.
Oh, God.
Here we go. Well, mortgage. What will happen if mortgage rates sink to 5%? Now, Barbara Corcoran, some of you may know who she is. She's a shark on the Shark Tank. And she wrote a book, and she had Corcoran Real Estate. By the way, they're owned by Anywhere. They were involved in the big lawsuit where they settled out, maybe $85 million before trial. Check this poll out if you haven't voted. It's interesting to see here, though, because the question was, what will happen if mortgage rates sink to 5%? Besides Paul saying, man, that's going to be a great opportunity for me. And every other lender that's in America that hasn't already given up their license, by the way, because they needed to go get a job. But buyers still require a lower price. Number one at 27%. And then C, home prices will skyrocket. And this is what Barbara Corcoran says.
No.
But I'm here to tell you, if it hasn't worked in new home construction, and that's been the desirable market, by the way, for the last 2+ years, 3 years, going on 3 years, new home construction has been way more desirable than existing homes. Number one, because the buyers don't have to negotiate, and they hate that. They didn't have to negotiate. They just walk in, they pick the lot. They were one of 4 that could buy a house that month in that neighborhood. They were pressured into it. That was the pressure, but there was no negotiation. It's like going to CarMax around here. I don't know if you guys have CarMax throughout the country. I don't know if they're nationwide or not. But one of the things that's nice about buying a used car at CarMax, the price is the price. There's no negotiation. There's a certain amount of people that just like that. They don't want to haggle. They don't want to get stuck, bogged down with some terrible real estate agent, that didn't help them at all or whatever. And they're angry so they just want to go into the model home. They want to pick their floor plan. That's it. It's brand new. They won't have to do anything in the house, hopefully for 7 to 10 years, except live and pay high HOA fees. And, sometimes they can have dogs, sometimes they can't. Maybe they'll have an Airbnb next door. Maybe they won't if it's banned in the neighborhood. But the point is, if it hasn't worked for new construction, dropping interest rates, that proof is there, man. It's the only thing that dropping interest rates are going to do right now for people, in my opinion, is make sellers get off the couch. They're going to be like, what? Interest rates are 5.5%. I'm at 4. That's not that much different. Man, I need to get rid of this house while I still can before rates hit double digits in 2025 when we get a new president of the United States. When they get dumped on with the whatever bag of economic garbage they have to try and sort through. That's assuming we have a different administration. Who knows? I don't have a crystal ball. If it's the same administration, they're going to have to deal with it too. So, but I think sellers are going to get off the couch. Airbnbs are going to sell like mad. And the other thing that's going to happen is that some of these long-term rental people are going to get out of the business because of what's happening with the rental market and the weaponization in a lot of these states and governments of tenants against their landlords.
So what you're saying is that when we sink to 5%, that we're 100% going to be in a buyer's market?
I think we're going to see a lot of inventory hit the market, and we're going to be in a buyer's market. Now, what that will look like, it's hard to say. I mean, this is just my prediction. I mean, looking back, and we'll look at some of the inventory numbers, and you guys can decide for yourself. But, I mean, being in the housing market, Paul, you've been in the housing market for a long time. We just established that, longer than me. I got into the housing market in 1989 as a contractor. You were in it in 1986 as a mortgage officer, loan officer. I mean, we're right pretty much neck and neck with that. So we'll look at the numbers. But before, let's just talk about rentals some more. Because the Democrats put a couple bills on the table First of all, it's said that institutional investors, I'm not talking about mom and pop, I'm talking about institutional investors, own about 750,000 residential, single family residential homes in America, 700,000 plus or minus. There's a new bill on the table right now. There's actually a couple that I've read about. One wants to ban institutional investors, or really one wants to ban hedge funds more specifically from participating in the single family housing market. And what they want is they want to give them 10 years to liquidate hundreds of thousands of houses. By the way, I don't think anybody believes this is ever going to pass. They're going to fight capitalism all the way. I mean, I don't even know. Do we even have capitalism? I mean, what kind of capitalism? We don't have much of a free market, in my opinion, but they're going to fight it all the way. They're going to beat the drum. I mean, Wall Street, man, they do a lot of lobbying. But there's another bill, which is, if I had to say, like, stupid is, the stupid doesn't, I'm not talking about Democrats. I'm just talking about these bills, not bringing the sides to the table, though I think it's really interesting that Kennedy switched and now is an independent. That's a different story all in itself. But anyway, the second bill that is or they want to pass, it's called the American Neighborhoods Protection Act. And what they want to do is they want to require corporate owners that own 75 or more single family houses, right? They want them to pay $10,000 like a tax to go into this housing trust fund to be used as a down payment assistance program. What? You're gonna charge them almost $1,000 a month. What the hell is that gonna do to rents? I mean, come on. This is I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Paul, I'm
not sure if I want to touch it.
Huh?
It sounds like they're treating them like they treat banks.
No, they bail the banks out. Banks get bailed out. I mean, the banks are. I mean, one of the things that they're doing right now by raising interest rates is, allowing credit card companies to really make a lot of money.
Yeah.
You guys, I mean, you don't have an opinion on that? You think $10,000 is that like, I tell you what, I'll come up with one bill and you come up with this other bill and we'll see if we can get the one bill to pass because the other bill is completely ridiculous.
I wonder how many bills are like that never really see the light of day, but they were somebody's baby for a while, but then they just sort of die a slow death. I mean, we were talking about something about fossil fuels and energy. What was it? Natural gas, right? You were talking about that. Well, I'd heard at an MBA meeting, at a Homebuilders meeting a year or so ago, it was one of the counties contiguous to DC. So I'm not going to say which county it was, but it was one of the two counties you're thinking
Howard County.
I don't think it was Howard. There was
Howard County. They tried to slide a bill in Howard County through without any community impact at all, and it didn't make it.
Which bill are you referring to? Because are you reading my mind?
One where new construction could not put fossil fuels.
Yeah. Okay. You heard about that too.
That's it.
Yeah. Okay.
Come on, man. You got to get up earlier than that.
Yeah. I heard that and I thought, I just about fell out of my chair. Nobody else seemed to be, there was kind of like, tepid response to it. I thought, are you kidding me?
It's coming back. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. They are going to stop fossil fuels from entering new home construction. It's already happening in states like New York, where they are going to make all of these building owners retrofit these 100-year-old multifamily buildings, apartment buildings that have boilers in them, gas boilers, oil boilers. They're going to require them to switch everything over to electric. It is going to bankrupt or they're going to pay these astronomical fines. It's going to be coast to coast. It's coming. It's coming. That's why the gas companies, I guess, are why we lost 10, points, were 10 points less than last year in piped gas into the house. Electric's up. Yeah. Let's check
It's
out
very
this
similar. Very similar, Todd, though, until where there was a situation that we knew about where the septic failed and you're forced to go be part of the sewer. You're not able to replace the septic in some areas in some counties. So it's probably along the lines
about
of that.
us.
I didn't want to specifically name
about
drop,
our
but
office.
now that you did.
Yeah. Yeah, well, now I have to tell the story.
No, well, I mean, it's a good story though, and I think it goes along the lines of that it's like being phased out, and now you're forced to be able to have to go into the sewer system. You can't just replace a septic anymore.
So our office is like 120 years old. It's the old farm in Cockeysville. It was actually owned by there's a quarry right down the street. Melissa, what's the quarry?
I mean,
name?
I feel the house. Oh, the core. Oh, I can't even remember the quarry name. But all I know is the house.
I drive by it every single day. I should know it like I know my name.
Something. Yeah.
It's the one that misbills me all the time. That you call them like every other month. I mean, it's the quarry. Where they put somebody goes through with the same company name and charges my account at the scale house, doesn't do anything, and then they send me like $14,000 bills, and takes months to get them to credit the right company because they're so big. Martin Marietta. Yeah, thank you.
I was going to say it, but I was like, do I want to say that online? I knew it was Martin Marietta. I was like, should I say that? That's not the name of the quarry. It used to
be Campbell Quarry. It's a limestone quarry years ago. And the house that we bought for our office, we did an office conversion to it. It's the coolest house. It used to be the farm it was a Campbell of the Campbell Quarry that built the house. And it was a working farm. And we have pictures. I mean, there's a lot of stories that go with this thing. I could tell multiple stories, as well as the dog that's buried in the backyard. But anyway, it has a private septic system, and they hooked it up to public water when they brought it through years ago. And the private septic was, I was allowed to keep it. I had it inspected when I bought it, and the county came out and they said, look, we'll let you keep it because it passed inspection. But when that thing goes up, you're going to have to connect to public. You can't replace this sewer system or tank. Now, I could have gotten it replaced. I could have called up one of my buddies and said, just come and put a new tank in here for me. But we show up to work one day, and there's a gaping hole in the parking lot. Sure enough, the septic collapsed. So they made me hook up to the sewer, which means they could charge me more, because they were just charging me for water. And now they can charge me for water and sewer based on water consumption, not how many times we flush the toilet. But that's another racket, how they get you with that. But that's what Melissa's talking about. But yeah, I mean, they make you connect.
They make you. Yep.
Yeah. What got us on that story, by the way? What were we talking about?
I don't even. Fossil fuels, getting rid of the fossil fuels.
I mean, yeah, sure.
Down the path.
Same thing. We have fossil fuels in the office, though, man. I love the natural gas. The heat that we have is warm.
Yeah.
Check out this article. This is on HUDuser.gov. Maybe. Yep. That's it. Here we go. Institutional investors. If you can look, first of all, this is from the Office of Policy Development and Research. So maybe where some of these politicians are getting their information to put these bills together. An estimated 39% of rental housing units in the United States are single-family dwellings, because larger households tend to prefer the size of a single-family home. Roughly 41% of the renter population lives in single-family homes. Wonder why Wall Street wants in so much. Between 2011 and 2017, these investors purchased more than 200,000 single-family homes at a cost of $36 billion. Investor purchases surged again during the COVID-19 pandemic. In the first quarter of 22, investor purchases of single-family homes averaged 28% per month. That means, guys, and this is way bigger in other states, way greater than 28%. But this is who was competing with our residential home buyers, right? Compared with 19% the previous year and an average of 16% between 2017 and 2019. But check this out. 67% of the homes purchased in Lincoln County, Mississippi were investors, 63% in Van Buren County, Iowa, and 52% in Tarrant County, Texas in 2021. And this research was done by MetLife Investment Management, right? They suggested that about 700,000 single-family houses are owned by institutional investors. And while we're on the track of talking about MetLife, because they're quoted here in this government website, MetLife posted an article earlier this year on CNBC that they said institutional investors do not yet control a large market share in housing. But analysts writing at MetLife Investment Management suggest they could be by 2030. So if you don't think, ladies and gentlemen, that these numbers are a large percentage of single-family houses, they're saying that up to 40% is what this MetLife analyst said. About 40% of single-family residential housing could be owned by investors by 2030. Now, these bills that are on the plate right now being presented are going after and trying to stop this activity. The problem is it's probably not going to work. You're not going to stop it. You just saw most people want to live, if they're renting, they want to live in a single family house. So, anyway.
That's quite a number. It's a huge percentage. Very
Big
scary. Mm-hmm.
Paul,
Did they sell any?
are you too cozy in your jacket, man? I think we're losing you, brother. I think you need to get down to your t-shirt, man.
The percentages there are, the percentages there are, I'm not sure if alarming is the right word, but they are kind of eye-opening. Well,
we're not counting mom and pops. We're not counting small businesses. We're not probably counting fractional. I mean, look at Bezos with his arrived homes. I mean, these guys are gearing up.
Well, you remember 20 years ago, remember what happened with oil prices when hedge funds started buying oil futures. For the longest time, Exxon, Chevron, those places, they bought oil. They speculated in oil. And then, some of the smart guys on Wall Street started figuring out how much they could manipulate the market maybe and make huge gains on, they formed derivatives to trade these things. And that's why prices were just going to go crazy. That's not a free market. I would say institutions buying owning 600,000 or 700,000 single family properties, it's probably still a free market. Kind of hard to argue with it, because if I sell my house,
28% of the people buying houses are investors, single family houses, 28% buying houses, competing with homeowners. You say that's a free market? It's a free market that jacked up home prices 20% a year.
If somebody offered you 5% more for your house than a family down the street, would you sell the family for less, or would you sell to an institution?
Is that the free market? Is that the question you're asking me? Is that the free market?
I mean, should they be restricted from being able to buy property?
That's the question.
It's a question. It's certainly something to think about, but
I mean, it's
Well,
you're
and
talking
then
about more government control, but look, man, we know, okay, a lot of these companies don't play with their money. They don't play with their money. These CEOs, these board members, they are raising money from investors. If I don't look, if I can lose $700 million like Zillow,
we have a comment here that is.
does the CEO? I mean, are they taking a pay cut? Are they saying I'm going to give my check up? These people, this isn't what I call capitalism. This is, they get favors, tax. I mean, look, businesses get tax incentives, tax cuts to come to town. I mean, we're talking about they pay a lot less for money than any home buyer does. If a home buyer is buying at 4%, you can guarantee these institutional investors are buying way cheaper than that. Right?
Well, I mean, here it is right here. How can anyone stop it? If prices go up, they buy more because they are the group willing to buy at that interest rate. If prices drop, they buy more because they have millions of dollars to do so.
Yeah, but this
is I don't know what the answer is, Paul.
This is not, elastic economics where the price of the borrowing going up and down is not going to affect their ability or their desire to acquire these properties. They're buying with cash. They've got many billions of dollars with which to do so. So are they going to be disinclined to buy because interest rates are higher? I mean, to me, this is fairly recent news to me. Just, I just heard it within the last, month or two, probably from one of your shows, that institutions were buying that much. I mean, I was hearing about foreign buyers, buyers from Europe and Middle East and Asia. And I'm more concerned about, somebody overseas entities owning real estate in this country than I am institutions. I'm not saying I'm not concerned about institutions having a big role in owning single family rental properties.
They're buying up our farmland. A lot of them are buying up our farmland. Canada is the number one foreign investor in the U.S. for buying real estate. Believe it or not, Canada's number one. If you look at what's happening in the Canadian housing market right now, and by the way, we follow Canada and a lot of their same laws and their economy. I mean, I think we've chased after them with the healthcare system. They're crashing and real estate prices are crashing. I mean, they are so unaffordable. It is cheaper just about in every market in Canada to rent than it is to buy. It's so upside down. No one can buy. No one can own. It's crashing like crazy. Their prices year over year, 2 years in a row, massive price declines, right? I think that's one of the reasons why they were investing in real estate here in the U.S. But nevertheless, everybody wants to argue a supply and demand. And I say, okay, that's true. It is supply and demand until you knock out all the affordable homes you build for unaffordability. The single family or the existing housing market doesn't sell because rates are high. If we drop those rates down, they're going to sell. The distressed sellers, the ones that are pent up seller demand, they're waiting for it to come. We're going to see major price declines, in my opinion. We're going to see the same thing as Canada. We're going to see it here in the U.S. We're just lagging. Real estate's lagging. We're looking at backward-looking data. We're looking at stuff that's, things that are settling today were put under contract 30, 45, 60 days ago. I talked to somebody today. They've had a house under contract for a month. They're not ready to close. They can't even get it financed. They're still going back and forth saying, how are we ever going to get this thing to pass FHA? Because there's so many things wrong with the house. So they're trying to figure a way that because the seller wants to sell, they don't want to let the contract go. I mean, they just keep extending. And we've been seeing that on a lot of deals, because the sellers, they don't want to let go, right? Massive price reductions. So far, we just had a commenter. I did on the post, the community post. Commenter lives in Austin. They're the cheapest house on the street. You guys can cruise over to the community tab and check it out. She just posted this evening and said she can't sell her house. She's the cheapest in the street. She's had price reductions. It's been for sale for a month, and it's crickets. Crickets. I would like to tell you that my phone is ringing off the hook because rates dropped almost a full percentage points. It means nothing. Nothing. Let's look at inventory. Go to statista.com. What I want to do is I want to talk about home sales for a minute, because this is where people, I don't understand why, people don't look at the data more when they make comments. And if they're interested, in the market, they should dive into the details here. This chart goes back to 2005. Now, yes, our inventory numbers for this year, and this goes back, the 23 data is not accurate. I can tell you, we're going to probably close somewhere around 3.9 million houses this year in the U.S., home sales. The important thing to look at here is last year, we claimed a housing shortage, but we still sold more houses in America than we did in 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14. We still had a lot of sales. I mean, we talk about, home sales being down, inventory being down. We talk about this. It just was absorbed quicker, guys. The only thing that happened we don't think about this, but the only thing that happened, the same sales numbers were not that far off the mark. And it's easy to say, because of the interest rates, why the number is going to be 3.9 million instead of 5.3 million like it was last year, or 6 million in the frenzy. We're still not talking about major shortages. It's just their inventory's low and it gets absorbed much quicker. The home sales are still taking place. But my point is that one of the reasons why the home sales are going to be at 3.9 million this year is because sellers are holding on to what they have, because interest rates are so high, and they know if they put it on the market, the buyers are just going to beat them down because they can't afford it, or the days on the market was going to eat them alive. That's why in some markets, over 50, almost 60% of the inventory has had price reductions. That's active right now. People that have their house on the market right now, they have to sell. The only ones that are getting the frenzy are the ones that price it below where they would normally price it, and they're getting those bidding wars still. But if you look at the numbers, they're lower than what they would have sold for 2 years ago. And they're not getting the amount of offers. Maybe they're getting 4 when they underprice a house right now. They get 4 offers. They want to say, oh, we're a multiple offer situation. Put your best foot forward. And you go, we did. And you still get it. But my point is, we look at that. So that's number one. We're looking at the inventory. Now, the next thing I want to do is look at the months of supply for new construction. Right now, this is important. These are important metrics. What you have to look at is in October, and this has gone up even higher, but in October, we're almost 8 months of supply, right? According to last year's new home construction numbers, this is 3/4 of a year's supply that we have on tap right now in new home inventory. When we look at 7.8 months of supply, talking about hundreds and hundreds of thousands of houses in inventory, right? Let's look at this next chart. All right, with trading economics, this chart here is going to show you that in October, we had almost 1.375 million new home starts. Guys, this should be alarming. That is a lot of new inventory. Okay. This is in millions. It's in 1.3 million. All right. We have a lot of inventory getting ready to come on the market. So, Paul, let's talk interest rates, because just to kind of recap, my theory is interest rates drop. We're going to see inventory hit the market like mad. We already know builders, they have flush with inventory. They have more inventory than they know what to do with right now. If you go through new home communities, they are building house after house after house after house under roof. They have more fresh starts. They have more ready to move in, available in January, available in February inventory that is ready to go. You could literally be in your new home at the beginning of the year. And a lot of these sales centers they're empty. They're dead. I'll tell you, we'll get into you, Paul. I know you have some charts, but let's take some comments and address these.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions here for Paul. So I want to start with this super cash from Charles. Always.
Charles, thank you so much, man. We appreciate you.
So generous. Yes, giving.
He was born in 1986. Dude, and I used to have arms that looked like that picture of yours right there. I'm kidding. I never had arms like that. I wish.
And Charles has another one here. Did you say mortgage rates are hovering over low sevens? My lender quoted me around 6.5 for VA.
Paul?
Well, typically when we talk about rates, we're talking about rates that are priced at par. So just to explain what that means, par means no points. So you'll see average interest rates, you'll see speculations for the forecast for interest rates, and they're always factoring in maybe a half a point, 3/4 of a point. When you hear the average Fannie Mae rate last week was 7.21%, that's typically with some percentage of origination charges, which we'll get into those things later. But a 6.5% VA rate, if that's with no points, that's extremely good. So, but that might be a rate with 1 or 1.5 points. So, I don't know. In fact, I looked up VA today. I've noticed there are a few things to say about the market, and if we have time, we can go deeper, we can go shallow. But when I look at a rate and I look up a price for a particular buyer who's buying with a certain price point, a certain delivery date, 30 days, 60 days, whatever, and I go to my little pricing engine. It's just a screen on my laptop, and it's a system called Optimal Blue that most lenders in the country, probably 3/4 of them, use this particular system for pricing. Well, what I see is I'll see a range of rates. I'll see a rate of 6% on the low end and a rate of 8.5% on the high end. And then you see all these other corresponding numbers that go along with it. And what those numbers mean is, what are you paying to get that rate, or what are you being paid to take that rate? So for example, if let's say a rate with no points today is 7.25, and it could be VA, it could be conventional, it could be FHA, it could be anything. Well, there's always a lower rate that you can get. It might cost 0.5 point. It might cost 2 points, somewhere in the middle. And you can get a rate in the 6s. A point is a percent. 2 points means 2%, and it's a percentage of the amount you're borrowing. So if someone borrows $100,000 and pays 2 points to get that mortgage, they're paying the lender at closing $2,000 in points. Not to mention other origination charges and appraisal fees and credit report fees and so forth. But that's true 365 days of the year. There are always a variety of rates. When we talk about rates, when I talk to realtors about rates, when I talk to builders about rates, when I talk about to clients about rates, the conversation always starts with, this is the rate that you can get without paying any points. So a VA rate today of 6.5, definitely achievable. If that's even if it's a point 1% to get that rate today, that's outstanding. Jump on it and lock it if you can. If you're closing soon. Now I'll show you some forecasts that the MBA has issued for what they estimate rates to be for the next 2 years. Actually, I think the next 6 or 7 quarters going forward. And there might be some favorable news on the horizon. So we'll see. At least, this is an opinion of a think tank or a consulting firm that the Mortgage Bankers Association, that's what MBA means. I'm sorry if I didn't say that. What they contract that out to get forecasts for rates going forward. They have forecasts for the 10-year Treasury, and they have forecasts for mortgage rates. And there's something we might have a chance to talk about even tonight, something called the spread to Treasuries, where historically, in a nutshell, Treasuries are at one rate. 10-year Treasury is typically what we're talking about. And that's sort of a benchmark for where mortgages are. Mortgage rates are always going to be a threshold higher than Treasuries. And that typically, historically, as long as I've been following this, which has been probably 25 or 30 years, because when I was, in my 20s doing this, I didn't know anything from anything, and I wasn't looking at all the numbers behind the numbers. But essentially, there's a spread to Treasuries, and that spread's usually about 2% historically, low twos, 200 basis points. 200 basis points is the same thing as saying 2%. You're talking to a banker, 200 basis points. So 200, 210 basis points. Well, that spread right now is about 304 basis points. And I even clipped an article and I sent it to Melissa that gets a little bit esoteric, but there's some really interesting reason for why there's such a large spread between Treasuries and mortgage rates. So we could see interest rates stay flat for the next 6 months if the market perceives that steady rates are likely to continue for the next few years. Just that speculation, just that kind of reality, that will help mortgage rates come down. That's going to shrink. That's going to help shrink that spread to Treasuries. So, you want to take a look at that Mortgage Bankers Association forecast right now?
Yeah, let's pull it up.
That's the one. So it's kind of small, but you'll see that this shows a forecast that, oh, you know what? That's the wrong one. That's an economic forecast. That's the economic forecast. That's the one. That's the one. They show fourth quarter. If you look in the vertical column, Q4 under 2023, that shows the 30-year fixed rate mortgage rate to be 7.5%. And that's about where it is right now. It might be a fraction less than that. The 10-year Treasury yield, that shows 4.6%. That's actually about 4.26 right now, down from about 5% about 2 months ago. So if you look forward, let's look at the first quarter of 2024. They speculate that the rates could be at 7.1 and a Treasury of 4.3. Second quarter, 6.6 and a Treasury yield of 4%. So you're seeing two things happening there. You're seeing mortgage rates coming down. This is all just speculation. This is a forecast. This is not absolutely etched in stone, but this is a forecast, and there are some pretty intelligent metrics that go, thoughts that go into this. But you'll see both the Treasury yield and the mortgage rates have dropped, and they continue to drop through the rest of the year. And what you also see is you're seeing a compression in that spread to Treasuries. Look at 7.5 and 4.6 right now, and that represents a spread to Treasuries of almost 3%, 2.9 in this example. And look at December, or look at fourth quarter of 2024, and you see that spread drop to 2.4%. That curve continues, according to this forecast, through all 4 quarters of 2025. And look at that. The fourth quarter, they're talking about rates being 5.5% with a spread to Treasuries of just under 2%. That spread, that 1.9% spread, is pretty close to the historical mean. Is that going to happen? But just the compression, and part of what makes that spread to Treasuries widen is is actually real estate values, number one, and fear of prepayment. See, when a company like a life insurance company buys a pool of mortgage-backed securities, they might be buying $50 million of securities to pay claims for future years. Well, if they invest and the mortgage rate is 7%, they're getting 6.5%. So there's a difference between what the investor is actually getting in the pass-through and what the rate is to the consumer. And the difference there is made up in servicing income that the lender gets for servicing the loan, paying the taxes, paying the insurance, sending out statements and so forth. But the investor that's putting $50 million into that, the last thing they want to have to do is to reinvest that $50 million a year later. And if there's a fear that rates are going to really go down significantly, that's going to keep investors, meaning investors who are buying mortgage-backed security, making mortgage money plentiful, they're going to be less likely to want to get in the market. And that we're seeing a little bit of that right now. So it's kind of almost counterintuitive. The reason there's not a lot of activity in the secondary market for institutions to buy mortgage-backed securities. Now we know institutions are buying real estate. We saw that, saw that number, but the institutions are still a little bit hesitant to invest significantly in mortgage-backed securities because of fear of prepayment. That's one factor that's made that spread to treasuries as wide as it is right now. So
well, I mean,
does that make sense? Or am I?
Oh no, yeah,
Okay.
100%. I think you explained that really well. I think there's one kind of play card that we're not considering here when we're looking at that data, and that's the government and their ability to do quantitative easing. Because when I look at that chart, if we think about this, at 5.5% in 2025 for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, we haven't built the housing market, the pricing structure of the housing market for those types of rates to be sustained. I mean, we're looking at the majority of mortgages are under 4%, right? 3%. 2.74%. I think we got down to at one point. That allowed these prices to skyrocket. Not only that, but these institutional investors were able to compete with the home buyers at the tune of 28% of single family houses to compete against them to bid those prices up even higher. We priced this market for cheap financing. If we're looking at another 2 years, we got to go all the way through 24 and into the end of 2025 to get it 5.5% for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. That will be devastating to the current price housing market compared to all of the other costs. I mean, Paul, you're a lender. You're looking at the HOA fees, the condo fees. You're looking, that's all considering debt to income, right? I mean, it's all their payment. You're looking at the amount of insurance that is, the bills that are coming in. You're looking and estimating property taxes, right? Escrows, these prepaids that people have to pay. We're watching people's monthly payments from 1 year ago go up $500, $600, $700 a month. We're talking about $7,000 a year for some of these borrowers. That's a lot of money. Right. So when we look at dropping, the rates to 5.5%, look what happened when we saw rates hit 5.5%. We watched the tipping point happen at 5.5%. Right. What do you think? You think the Fed's going to come in and start quantitative easing and buying mortgage-backed securities like they did before? 2 times in 2 markets. They did it this time when they didn't have to.
No, I think that ship has sailed. I don't think you're going to see the Treasury get involved with interfering in the market the way they did. I mean, there was great intentions, but
okay. So here's the question.
But that did I agree 100% that those low rates, those low rates were instrumental in property values exploding.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So look at this. Right? Look at this. They bailed out the banks from the 2008 crisis. These banks weren't as in debt as they are today. I mean, we're talking about, the banking was in bad shape, right? In the '08 crisis. These banks were bailed out because we pumped so much and bailed them out. They've gotten even bigger. So now the bailout of these banks is going to, I don't even know that it even, I'm starting to wonder whether it even matters. We have all these conversations about money and they'll just print it. I don't even think money matters anymore. I think it's ridiculous to think about it, like not having budgets. Like I would love to run a business without a budget. It'd be really cool. I'd go out and buy some new cameras and stuff. But anyway, we're looking at, so here's the thing. If we're already looking at FHA coming out with this new bailout, hopefully by the end of the year, right? Where they're going to do this mortgage credit thing. I think it's up to $1,000 on their monthly, mortgage. Have you heard about that?
I have not seen that.
Okay. Well, it's coming. They put it out in May for review and comments. And now they're hoping to wrap it up by the end of the year. And basically, because they know all these people are, I think FHA is almost at 10% delinquency rates. Melody Ray told us that last week. She studies, all of the numbers on delinquencies. But now that forbearance has ended, in December, they had to pay their mortgage payments. Their forbearance is officially over. We're 6 months of free. Don't pay your mortgage payment. Done. Now they're like, well, we got to come up with something else because all these people that are delinquent, we need to prevent foreclosures at all costs because we can't afford to cost the banks even more money. The bailout will be way bigger than '08. But they're now talking about giving $1,000 monthly mortgage credit up to $1,000. I think the number is for a minimum of 3 years, up to 5 years. This payment reduction for FHA borrowers. They're trying to sort out the details right now. Right?
I have not caught wind of that, and I think we spoke a couple weeks ago about the annual actuarial report that was sent to Congress. That's been required since 2001. And there's no mention of it in that actuarial report. In fact, as of that was actually issued November 15th. And the information at that time was very, very current. The delinquencies, the FHA delinquencies were nowhere near 10%. So I'm not sure if maybe her information is right, but maybe they're looking at a different metric. But I saw
we're not talking. There's a difference between serious serious delinquencies over 90 days. We're talking about delinquent 30 days past due, right? So it's a much lower threshold. There are a lot more people that are over 30 days past due versus over 90 days past due. So there is a difference. But the bottom line is we're talking about numbers that are still pretty alarming. 30 days past due paying your mortgage.
Your credit is banged up.
It's not good, right?
No, it's not. And those things often go. They usually go worse before they go better.
Mm-hmm.
So that's. I'll be digging into that the next couple of days to get more facts in front of me. But that's 10% is a extremely high number
or something. Yeah,
that's really, really high.
Well, check out the NBA, reports too, because NBA, and again, what is so aggravating about a lot of this data, man, is it's really hard to find. They're not just spitting it out because that would be devastating to put, come on, we don't want to.
No, it's not that hard to find, Todd. Just listen to your podcast every week.
Paul, listen. It took me so much research digging into documents to see that in the first quarter of this year, 23, 312,000 people received money to prevent their mortgage from foreclosure. That took advantage of, some type of forbearance, modification, right? there have been reports millions of people have taken advantage of modifications and forbearance. Right? I mean, this is, you know,
I'm aware of that. I wasn't
about,
aware of any of any
we're
payments being
talking
made.
about
People
payments being made. Man, the CARES Act gave $50,000 to the people in the state of Maryland, households in the state of Maryland. Look, every state in 2021, when Biden ended the mortgage foreclosure moratorium, July it ended, end of July 2021, mortgage foreclosure ended. You know, the moratorium where you couldn't be kicked out for not paying your mortgage. At the same time, they gave the states money to distribute at the state level to people that were still struggling with housing related costs. We're talking in Maryland, it was up to $50,000 per household. This is beyond the moratorium. Up to $50,000 per borrower. You had a 5 answer questionnaire on the state website. I did it in one of our podcasts. I clicked through the answers. You know, are you a homeowner in the state of Maryland? Are you, behind, delinquent in your mortgage? Blah, blah, blah. 5 questions to be eligible to apply for up to $50,000 to pay housing related expenses. That included mortgage, taxes, and insurance, right? I mean, they extended FHA to match VA 40-year mortgages, right? As part of the remodification. They took up to 30% of the loan balance of the defaulting mortgage borrower. Up to 30% of their balance, cast it as a second mortgage on the back end of their loan, interest-free, reducing the payments. This modification has been going on for a long time, man.
Yeah,
this has been going on for years.
Yeah,
years, right? So, I mean, the thing is now that just the fact of the matter is that they can't have these foreclosures. So what I'm thinking here is the pressure's they're going to have to do QE. They're going to have to start buying mortgage-backed securities again. They're going to have to do that because if they don't, we're going to see, it's going to be worse than 2008. If they stopped kicking this can down the road, man, if they would have not put these policies in place, we would be this would be a complete, first of all, the Silicon Valley Bank failure on March 12th weekend would have started a bank fallout that would have gone down in the history books as the worst banking collapse in history. That would have been, I mean, if they hadn't have jumped in there that weekend, man, can you imagine? We're talking about people losing hundreds of millions of dollars in a bank account. Like 90% of their depositors had more than $250,000. They had millions of dollars. I know somebody, we know a friend of ours, worst, she described it as the worst weekend of her life, not being able to have access to their bank account and millions of dollars, man. They're a technology company, right? They would have lost all their employees. They wouldn't have been able to pay them, right? That's what happened this year. We just glaze right over it. We forget it, man. We're in November. We don't even want to, what just happened? What just happened? If you don't think that was AIG to the equivalent or more, way bigger than AIG, like the bailout of AIG, but yet Lehman Brothers, Bear, all those guys, right? Toast. Can you imagine what you're in banking? What would have happened if they didn't bail out Silicon Valley Bank in March of 23?
I wish you'd give me this to prepare for tonight. I would have probably has a pat answer for you.
You don't know? You don't know?
I can only speculate that, that typically a run on one bank is going to cause runs on subsequent banks.
Well, it did.
And
we had the second, the third,
yep.
Right? And we watched billions of dollars come out of regional banks going into Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo. People were taking their money out of the bank at massive rates. We were having bank runs. Right? Anyway, let's take some more comments. That's just my point. I mean, when I look at it, I'm like, man, I think the Fed's going to have to do QE. They're going to have to start buying mortgage-backed securities. They're going to have to. And when mortgage rates come down, and I think it's going to be, what's going to happen is, I think we're going to go back up. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. We're going to see downward pressure on interest rates. The Fed's going to, in my opinion, who knows? We watch this in a year, and you're either going to say, Todd, you were 100% wrong, or man, you were somewhat wrong, or you weren't wrong at all. Who knows? I'm willing to speculate. A lot of people don't want to speculate. I'm willing to speculate because it's my business. I have to speculate as a real estate broker, as somebody that's in the industry. If I don't speculate, how do I run my business? I have to I have to think of, what are these scenarios? We have to take the whole whiteboard, and mark it up at the office and say, we got category A, or option 1, 2, 3, 4, 10. We have to figure out here, all right, guys, what are we seeing? What's the play? What happens if this happens? What's going to happen next? Right? We have to do this because we have a responsibility to our clients. For one, we've got buyers, we have sellers, we have people that want to transact. We have people nationwide that are calling in to us. When, do you have an agent for us? By the way, we do. We have great agents. We have great lenders like Paul. Paul wouldn't be on here if we didn't trust his opinion, his professional opinion. He's an expert, right? But my point is, we have to strategize this. I have to speculate. I could be wrong, but I have to speculate. 1989, I started my business. It's a long time ago, 35 years ago. Let's take some more questions.
Sure. We got some more super chats here. Have this one. It's crazy. We have a central bank determining rates and act surprised. There are distorted markets. We've normalized collectivistic central planning, bailouts, etc., and have the audacity to call it free market capitalism.
Very astute comment.
And then we've got
thank you so much for your super chat.
Thank you for your super chat. QM products like FHA and VA is below 6 already at a lot of places. UWM, HTM, FHA is a 6 rate at a 680 plus FICO credit score. Investor prop second HELOC are around like 8.5, 9. Non-QM at 9.125%. 9.5% to 11. Bridge is at 5.
We ought to let Paul read this one.
That's right. Yeah, that's
it's like that's right. Well, we appreciate your super chat.
Thank you so much.
10 extras. But Paul, what do you have to say about all that? I mean, is this still probably the same thing with points?
I would imagine so. I don't even know if
I
can probably check on my laptop right now to see if there's anybody out there in the industry with a 6% rate at any price, but that sounds awfully low. And I'm not sure what he's talking about, 6% rate with a 680. Well, I know what a 680 FICO investor. I can't really decipher all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's just saying with a second mortgage, maybe second HELOC on a property.
I mean, non-QM means non-qualified mortgage.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think, hey, you might be right on that. I don't know what the UWMHTEM means. What's that stuff, Paul?
Maybe he'll get back on and explain that. I don't know what that is.
All right. Well,
Yeah, we've got
if you're still watching, maybe you can tell us what it is.
please comment.
It sounds
Yeah.
interesting, though. We need to know.
Yeah.
We've got the Duke here. Thank you so much for your super chat. Great show once again.
I think Duke
Appreciate
bought a
that.
house.
Thank
Dude,
you.
thanks, Duke.
Yeah,
Think he
and
found himself
enjoying
a
the
good deal.
show.
Yep,
Thank
Randy.
you, Randy.
Thank you.
Very much. And I think there was one more. Bear with me here. We've got Charles again. Charles saying, yes, institutional investors and hedge funds should be banned. All single family homes should be owned by single families. Goes on to say,
Thanks,
crony
Charles.
capitalists is not free market capitalism. These huge businesses are government allowed monopolies. These huge businesses also pay off politicians to pass legislation favorable to them. So thank
It's
you
kind of
so
hard
much.
to compete on a free market with, these big hedge funds.
And Paul, there are
read
some
about Rockefeller. Read about Rockefeller and the railroad back at the turn of the century.
There are
The
some
old-
specific questions here for you, Paul. Question for Paul. We've got Travis here, Real Estate Mindset. Thank you for the question. What's the max DTI you can go on FHA loans with AUS approval?
Okay, what the caller is saying, DTI means debt to income, and an AUS approval is a loan that's approved through an automated underwriting system like Clues. Well, that Clues is an old countrywide term. Desktop underwriter is Fannie Mae system. Loan prospector is Freddie Mac system. And it's a great question because I've seen debt to income ratios. Well, I think mine internally or our investors, the investor that we sell FHA loans to, is going to put a limit of 50% on a debt to income ratio. I've seen loans in the last couple of years with debt ratios I've heard of get approved at even higher than 50%, 55, 57%. Now, let me explain what that is. That's somebody who's taking 57% of their gross income that's being allocated toward their housing expense and all fixed monthly obligations. Doesn't include your cell phone bill. Doesn't include your car insurance. Doesn't include your food. It includes your car payment, your minimum payments on credit cards, and student loans. If you have student loans, typically 0.5% of what the balance of the student loan is count as a debt. Now that's before taxes come out of your income. So if you make $100, do you get $100 in your paycheck? If you make $1,000, do you get $1,000? Heck no, you're paying 7.65% for FICA. You're paying state. And if you're in Maryland and you get the Baltimore, you get the county tax on top of it with a piggyback, you're
13% if you live in Howard County.
You're at least 30% is coming out of your gross income. So now you're taking a factor. Let's say I even approve somebody with a 49% ratio. Okay, that's 49 divided by 100 is 49, but 49 divided by 70 is 70%. It's just unrealistic. It's unsustainable. And AUS systems are great. And believe me, I've seen wonderful things happen with them, but since 2008 until now, and there was 2008, a lot of people lost homes, a lot of people lost a lot of money, but these AUS systems are still spitting out approvable loans with debt to income ratios that don't make sense.
Well, you said something that's laughable. Minimum credit card payments, minimum payments. I mean, my gosh. I mean, let's think about that, right? If you pay the minimum payment on your credit card, you'll be paying for your credit card as long as you'll be paying for your house.
And
that's crazy.
The Credit Card Reform Act says they now have to show you, okay, I have a credit card from Chase, Southwest, because I fly on Southwest, and I have a balance that I pay in full each month. Thank God I'm fortunate enough I can do that. But even if I wasn't able to, I wouldn't buy what I buy. So I live within my means. But if I paid the minimum payment on this credit card, it would take 17 years to pay it off. Can you see that? Right there. 17 years.
That's not bad. I mean, that's less
Oh,
than your
gosh.
30-year mortgage. All right.
Gosh.
So
Yeah.
let me have a shocker for you. Somebody called me not that long ago and said they could do debt to income ratios of 60, up to 60%. And I said,
It sounds like somebody's
and
bragging
you
about
think that's
that.
good? You want me to give you to my clients? I mean, really?
There are cases where a ratio like that could make sense. But they're so few and far between. And I think, Todd, I may have told you at one time, for the longest time, you could get a conventional loan approved through desktop underwriter, Fannie Mae's system, Fannie Mae's automated system, which meant they would buy this loan. The income calculation was bulletproof. If you got a 64.9% debt to income ratio, it could be a 95% loan to value, and that loan would be approved eligible. If you have good credit, a 64.9% debt to income ratio on a Fannie Mae loan with 5% down. That's insane. That's insane.
Yeah, definitely.
So you just gotta, I hope some of the listeners have heard this before. Nobody cares more about your money than you. Nobody cares more about you than you. Please look at these things and consider what the real cost is. Don't make the presumption. Don't make the leap of faith. If the lender says I'm approvable for this, well, they know what they're doing, so of course I can afford it. No.
Are you saying not to date the rate? Date the rate and marry the house?
Where's
you
the
don't
blackboard?
think that,
Fingernails on the blackboard. Come on. We've talked about this before. No.
Man, I love it when lenders say that. I got to tell you, man, I just love it. I think absolutely not.
Definitely not.
Definitely not. Melissa, we already talked about that. That's a goodbye moment. Goodbye.
Do you have any other questions there?
There are questions specifically for you. We're going to go to this one. Question for you, Paul. Okay. Reverse mortgages. What are they and why limited to 62 and older? And will some form be offered to middle age with equity?
Okay, what a reverse mortgage is, it's also called a home equity conversion mortgage. It's an FHA insured loan. And it's limited to people 62 and older because essentially you don't have to qualify. You just have to be age appropriate, 62 or older, and you have to have equity in your property. So FHA will appraise the property and then give you either in a lump sum or in a monthly distribution cash. It could be an annuity, but if it's a monthly annuity, you get it as long as you live. So the amount you're eligible for is determined by a combination of the value of the property, the amount owed on it, if any, and your age. And if you're married, the age of your spouse. So I'm 62 is in the rearview mirror. If somebody offered me a home equity reverse mortgage, I would not want it. There are some circumstances where it might be the only way that someone can really get by. And in that case, go for it. There's counseling that you have to take that's paid for provided by HUD or by the lender. It's one of the two. But is something going to be offered another form of equity, of basically an equity conversion to middle-aged people? The only thing I've heard of has to do with like a life insurance policy that might give you sort of an advance on your death benefit. That's probably more realistic than equity. If you're under 62, how much equity could you possibly have, and how long are you going to be around? Statistically speaking, if you're in reasonably good health, the actuaries.
What you're saying is they want you to be closer to dying.
Yeah.
Right. The age of where we pass on, right? And what you're saying essentially is it only works for people, unfortunately, that can't survive on their Social Security and Medicare, which is most of our aging population. Unfortunately, I think it's terrible. Yeah. It's terrible.
Yeah. I mean, there's
if you're young, it's like you said, like it is like a life insurance, right? They'll give you a life insurance policy when you're young, but they're not going to give it to you when you're old.
Right.
Right.
This they'll give you when you're old, but not when you're young. But that's what is a reverse mortgage.
Because there are
fees associated. There are fees associated with it. It's all there. If someone's 62 and older and is in dire straits and needs additional funds to live on, then by all means look into it. But I would say that would be a last resort. I would speak with family first before essentially giving the deed to your house to the federal government.
Well, I tell you, there's a lot. There are a lot of companies out there that are preying on people that, I think it's predatory. That need money, and what they're doing is, there was one company that basically was giving people money, and they had to use them to sell their house. They were putting a deed restriction in. And a lot of the, people were getting upset. I guess kids were getting upset that they, sold mom that idea that they'll give them a check and, but you had to use them to sell their house. Eventually they put it in the deed. And the problem is, as I could see it, if my mom were to do it and something were to happen to her and I sold the house, and I wouldn't know it until I got to the title company, to where they said, oh yeah, by the way, you owe this company X amount of dollars because mom signed up, because they gave her $1,500 or whatever, that she would have to use them to sell their house. And no one knew about it. Right. But there are other companies out there too, that will give these equity payments, but they are equity partners in your house too. I mean, we covered one of them on our podcast. So, I think there's a lot of people that are trying to get in on the equity of a house, right? They're trying to get in on these, and people do have equity. I mean, unfortunately, people are struggling in their 50s. People struggle in their 40s. I mean, people struggle financially when they're 25. But like you said, Paul, it's when they get something in their house. And I think that's where we misguided a lot of our Americans, to this dream of home ownership. For years we've said the American dream of home ownership. We have done this at the cost of only having equity in a home that, unless we move out of our house, we can't tap into it. Unless we give it up to a reverse mortgage to pay us a stipend every month to live on, yet they get our house after we invested in it for 40 years. 50 years, right? And now we've got to do a reverse mortgage on it because we've refinanced it because we needed the money. More 70-year-olds are in credit card debt today than they've ever been, right? So we're seeing where our aging population just can't afford to live based on Social Security and Medicare, right? You need supplemental insurance now, right? You got to make a lot of these decisions, within, I think, a year or whatever of hitting the age requirement. I mean, it's a lot to look into. It's a lot to navigate when you get up in years. And the thing is that we've sold America on this house investment plan. And when I talk to a lot of financial planners, they say some of the worst things that people do is only invest in their real estate. They have no other investment. They have no other retirement account. They have no other, especially if they're self-employed, they just work. They don't invest in any kind of a retirement plan. And they get to the age where, they look back and they go, geez, man, I can't afford to live. Costs of everything are so high. And, so now we're seeing where these fractional investors are coming in and giving you money for your house to live on. But now they own it. You're not passing it on to your kids. Now if you do go to sell to go into a retirement community or nursing home or whatever, now you have your equities eaten up by this fractional investor in your house. It's crazy, man. We have gotten so far off track, guys. How about it? I mean, do you guys agree? We've gotten so far off track, with a lot of the fundamentals and important things in life. It's crazy.
That's a much bigger topic. Much bigger topic than the thumbnail, for sure.
Yeah, let's go over your charts. Let's take a look at. Tell us what you put together.
It's been 6 straight weeks of mortgage rate declines. Slight, not substantial. I just want to make sure we have time. I know I sent you a number of things. I want to make sure that the simplest one, the one I sent, that's reasons to consider when thinking about refinancing. I just want to make sure we have time to go over that, because I think there's a couple of pearls in that I want to make sure your viewers get a look at that right there. Because when you called me the other day, Melissa called and said, there's going to be a flood of refinancing and people can save $100. And I thought, oh man, those two comments.
Oh, I didn't tell you it was going to happen. I told you about the article that I saw that made me sick to my stomach.
I understand that, but those two phrases, a flood of refinancing and saving $100 a month, that's kind of incongruent, because saving $100 a month is great. If somebody says, oh, change your deductible by $250 and you can save $100 a month on your insurance, great, that's a great deal. But to save $100 on a mortgage payment, wow, that made me think. So I thought, let me just put these thoughts together. So if you're considering refinancing, if you are, just a few things, and there's probably probably one or two points I missed here, but the first question I ask anybody is, how long are you going to stay in the home? If you're going to move to Florida next year, don't refinance. If you're going to, downsize, upsize, whatever, but that you want to address, how long am I likely to stay in this home? 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, until I die. Establish that, number one. And secondly, what is my current loan balance? Because if you owe $40,000 on a home equity loan or home equity line, and you're kind of ticked off because the rate keeps going up, well, your rate might be 7 or 8 or 9%. But if you owe $40,000, do you want to refinance that? The cost will eat you alive. It's just not going to be worth it. And a good lender is going to ask you these questions in some form or fashion. So, then what is my current interest rate? And what type of loan do I have? So if you have, for example, a VA loan, you're going to qualify for an IRRL, an interest rate reduction refinance loan, IRRRL. It's called IRRL, affectionately referred to as IRRL. That's a real easy type. There's, they typically don't need to check your credit. There's no appraisal fee. If your loan is staying with the set lender that services it, you might even get a break on their origination charges. And depending on how much you owe, going back to that loan balance question, if you owe $400,000 or $500,000 and your interest rate is 8%, you might not need a huge drop in the rate for refinancing to be worthwhile. So years ago, who remembers when they said you need a 2% interest rate reduction to make refinancing worthwhile? That was kind of an axiom for years. And I don't know where it came from, because that was really probably never really accurate, because sometimes you need more than that. Sometimes you don't need that much. It really depends on how much you owe, what is your current rate, how long you're going to stay there, how much is it going to cost you to refinance. So the type of loan you have could have a bearing on whether it's worth refinancing or not. What's your equity position? Number 5, maybe you bought your house at the absolute top of the market rate-wise and you put 5% down. And let's say you've got great credit. Okay. What's your interest rate? How much has it moved? It really hasn't moved that much yet. So you're probably not going to be in a position to take advantage of lower rates until we see some of those lower rates that we speculated are going to happen over the next year or two. Because a couple things to point out, number one, you're going to need to pay for another appraisal, most likely, unless for some reason you're eligible for a modification or a streamlined refinance. And if you have a loan with less than 20% down, the monthly private mortgage insurance you're paying when you refinance, guess what? It's going to go higher, because the PMI rates are cheaper for a purchase transaction than they are for a refinance transaction. You say, well, why is that? It is. It's just what it is. The logic for the justification is, if you buy a house, you're putting money into the property. If you're refinancing, you're typically not. So anyway, there is a difference in PMI rates for purchase versus refinance. Kind of goes without saying, but number 6, do you qualify for a new loan? Did you buy a house with 2 incomes and now you're down to 1 income, and maybe now you don't even qualify? So before you spend any money at all, make sure you do qualify. And then you really get into the nitty gritty. How much will it cost to refinance? And are you paying cash to refinance, or are you using your equity in your property? So, if you have a lot of equity in the property, the cost to refinance, it will probably take nothing out of your pocket, maybe an appraisal fee, but that's usually it. And then you can even have that come back to you at closing if you'd like. But you have to consider, how much is it going to cost? And then look at how much is your payment going to be reduced. And then that's a simple equation. If it costs you $6,000 to refinance and you're saving $150 a month, It's going to take 40 months. That's, almost 3.5 years just to break even. So break even. Okay. Break even. So like, Todd, if I lent you money and I said, I'm going to get my money back in 3 years. Well, God, I hope so, but what's in it for me? If it's going to take that long just to break even, are you sure you're going to be there for subsequently enough times, enough months, enough years to justify the expense? So there's something here that I thought of after I wrote this. And that is, I mentioned before that I see rates, I see a rate grid, and I'll see a range of rates. I'll look at the middle. I see the rate with no points. I can look lower and see how much will it cost to pay a point or 2 points, and how much will that reduce my rate. There are also rates that they're above par rates. So if the current rate with no points is say 7.25, at 7.5, me, the lender, I might pay you a point to take the rate. It's called, we used to refer to that as a lender subsidy. And it's truly a subsidy. It's where you're getting paid to take a rate that's higher than market. But if the purpose is to refinance to a lower rate, rates really have to move to where you can take advantage of a rate that's above market, which the benefit of that being you can refinance without incurring any closing costs because you don't have to add closing costs to your loan. The lender is going to pay it. So if rates drop a lot, then yes, we'll probably see a lot of people refinancing. And if they can do so, if you can drop your rate even 0.5 or 0.75% and have it and do it without incurring any expense. And you hear these on the radio a lot. There's still people that advertise that. Wesley Financial was one that was doing it for a long time. They don't do it right now, but they talked about rates where, they pay your lender, your title fees, your appraisal fee. They would pay everything, but you weren't getting a current market rate defined by what's the rate at par, what's the rate without points. You're getting a rate about 0.5% higher than that. So if it's dropping your interest rate by 1% or 1.5%, great. There's no risk to you. If rates continue to drop and they drop another 1.5% over the subsequent 12 months, you can refinance again. Who loses in that situation is the lender that lent you the money. That's called an early prepayment. And that was one of the reasons. The fear of early prepayment is one of the factors that are keeping rates, the spread to treasuries, keeping mortgage rates this high above the treasury instead of this high above the treasury. So,
and there's a big difference in the rate on a refinance and a new purchase too. So you can talk about that.
No, they're typically the same. Some lenders will choose to charge higher rates for refinance.
Yeah, I mean, most of what I've
been typical for years.
Yeah,
but truly, the cost to originate a loan and sell it in the secondary market.
So you're telling me when a new purchase rate was 2 3/4 of a point, you're telling me that people could refinance at 2 3/4?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I never saw it. Yeah, I never saw it. I mean, out of all the people
it was there.
Watched refinance, they didn't get the new purchase rate.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's typically a lender by lender decision. And I've seen many lenders over the years that would charge an 1/8 or 1/4% or even 3% higher for a refinance rate for a couple reasons. They wanted their salespeople. They wanted loan officers like me going out to find business from people who are buying property, acquiring an asset. They didn't want me going back to my customer that bought the house 6 months ago and say, hey, you want to refinance and save money? So that was one reason for that, was to basically discourage loan officers from chasing refinance business, because that was ephemeral. That was like typically a one-time thing where they wanted you to solicit business from your builders and your realtors and establish relationships for continuous ongoing business. But then another thing they were kind of concerned about was taking in a lot of business for loans that aren't as likely to close. There's something called a pull-through rate and purchase transactions. And this is lenders nationally, where pull-through rates for purchase transactions might be 85 or 90%. Because why don't loans go to closing if it's a purchase? Home inspection issue, buyer lost his job, things like that can happen. But the pull-through rate on refinances, when rates are really cheap, might be 55%. So lenders start losing money because they're placing commitments with their investors, with Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or whoever it is, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and those loans don't go to closing. So what? Guess what? If they did mandatory commitments, they have to pay for loans that didn't close, and it's expensive.
Did you do any refinance? I mean, were you in on that wave?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
If when the phone rings, whatever the need is, I'm going to be there to answer.
Did you do a refinance at 2.74%?
I did one for myself at 2.5% for a 10-year fixed rate. 2.5%. I did.
You probably gave up the fees. If you did it for yourself, you dropped a lot of the fees off of it. You didn't charge yourself, right? But I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about everybody else that would love to have bought and refinanced at 2.75%.
Oh, there were millions of
people.
Go
back to that chart because I have a couple more questions on that little line description you had there. So what I hear a lot, and so I want to talk about some of these costs because I don't know. Can we talk about costs?
Sure.
Okay. So let's talk about refinancing because, I'm hearing a lot of people say, oh, don't worry about it. When these rates drop, you can refinance, date the rate. I want to dive into that a little bit because there are a lot of people that said, okay. There was a lot of pressure put on buyers. Oh my gosh, if I don't get the house now, oh, it's high interest rates are going. Yeah, but it'll be ridiculous. The rates are coming down. The rates are coming down. I interviewed a lender, does a lot of business, said that we'd be back at 4% by the first quarter of 23. Right? I said, we'll be at 8%. Right? I honestly believe that we're going to see higher mortgage interest rates. I'm not buying this MBA mortgage stuff. I think we're going to see two scenarios, and that's no cut on you. These guys work for the banking industry, right? I mean, of course they want people to hang on, right? I mean, if they publish, these guys, I think mortgage interest rates are going to be 13% in 2025. Right. If they said that, everybody would be getting jobs. They'd be like, oh my gosh, I got to get out of here. They're a business that gets paid. The Mortgage Bankers Association gets membership fees from the banking industry, from lenders. You subscribe to that. It's an association. It's just like being with the National Association of Realtors. We buy into that. If they all of a sudden came out and said the whole thing's going to fall apart, if Lawrence Yun, the chief economist, said, oh guys, you better get jobs because the whole market, it's going to fall apart tomorrow. They're not going to say that, right? But let's just go down the route that they are, and let's just talk about they can refinance, and people bought at 8% or 7.75%. And they bought into the philosophy that you are going to refinance when rates come down. If I purchased a house, if we're going to make it easy, $500,000, and I put 3.5% down, right? I got an FHA loan, 3.5%. Maybe my mortgage rate was 7.5. What does it take for that mortgage rate? What would make sense for me to refinance? And is it even possible? I put 3.5% down. And what are the closing costs going to be? You said if you have an equity position, you can roll into the refinance with very little money out of pocket. But I just bought my house 6 months ago. And my loan officer said, as soon as the rates go down, I can refinance and have a cheaper monthly payment. Paul, talking to me in this scenario, and I come to you, when can I refinance?
It's a really good question. And the best way I can answer it is to say, you have to take a look at a few things. Number one, has your house maintained value or possibly gone up?
I bought it 6 months ago. Probably not.
Because if it hasn't gone up, then you're really going to be stuck unless you have ample cash. I mean, my initial thought when you described that 500,000, I'm thinking, okay, 3.5% down. That's 17.5 down, and then you got mortgage insurance that you're paying to FHA because FHA charged you a pretty hefty premium, about $7,000 lumped on to your initial loan balance, that upfront one-time mortgage insurance premium. And then beyond that, they're charging you, and this is a recent decline in the rate that we saw earlier this year, or end of last year. You're paying 0.55% in mortgage insurance. You divide that by 12. So in this case, you're probably paying about $220 a month in mortgage insurance. And folks, that's not the kind of insurance that pays the house off if you die or if you become disabled. Doesn't pay anything for you. It's think of it like a risk tax for not having 20% down, but it's a risk tax you pay to FHA for the entire term of the loan. It never goes away. It drops a little bit each year, but it never goes away. So I would talk to you to say, Todd, here's a strategy. You want to take a look at your finances, see what you can do to be able to squeeze enough cash to be able to get to 5% down and get a conventional loan. And it's great if you get a substantially lower interest rate, but even if it's just a little bit lower, it's going to be worthwhile.
What are the closing costs going to be?
Okay, I'll get that in a second. But the first thing, I just want to give you an idea of what my initial thought was here. If you get a conventional loan, you'll get mortgage insurance, but it will be finite. It's going to go away at a point in time. And I can show you how to kind of give you an idea of a rough figure, how that'll work. So
I'm still paying 7.5%. Forget the mortgage insurance. I'm still paying a hefty premium on my mortgage payment. Yeah. And I want a lower rate.
Well, the cost to you, it's going to be, let's say you go apply with the lender that services the loan. Because when you refinance, you basically have two buckets of costs, okay? You have your lender charges and your title charges. You could say 3 buckets, but I'm going to make it easy to say 2. You have your lender charges and your title charges. That's going to be your appraisal fee, whatever origination fee they're going to charge you. And that runs from anywhere from a recent poll of the local market, anywhere from about $1,000 to $2,200 or $2,300 is what I'm hearing.
$500,000 house. So I've only
$500,000 loan,
3.5%.
Yep. And then when you add an appraisal fee in there, you're going to be paying a lender somewhere between, say, $1,700 and $3,000 in lender fees. And then let's say another $1,500 or $2,000 in title fees and recording fees. That's $5,000 right there. If you're applying through your current lender, you're going to need to bring 1 additional month of taxes and insurance to closing, because when you refinance, you skip a payment. But if you're refinancing with a different lender, you're going to need to bring maybe 7 months worth of taxes to closing and maybe 9 months worth of insurance, because you need to square up that escrow account to be where you are right now. Now, you'll get that escrow money back from the current lender once they receive the payoff, but you have to be able to account for it to close a new loan. So it's not for the faint of heart. The closing costs, like everything else, have gone up.
Call it $7,000. That's practical. $7,000.
It could be a lot more
to refinance. It could be more, but call it $7,000. Now you want me to bring more money to the table. And quite honestly, Paul, if I'd have had more money to the table, I would have had it 6 months ago. But now I just bought the house, and now I need to put money into the house, and now everything has gone up, right? What I want people to listen to here with what you're saying is that, guys, you can't just say, I'm going to refinance when the interest rates drop. This is terrible advice. Mm-hmm. This is terrible advice. What you guys have to listen to this. What Paul is saying is terrible advice. If you don't have the cash and you don't have the equity in the house, now let's play it out and say, I hope you weren't banking on these 2-1 buydowns, right? Because in 3 years, your mortgage payment's really going up. What other chart you got? I mean, this is why we do what we do, right? Yeah. This is why we come out to the public and try and educate people. And people, some people say it's doom and gloom. What is worse than doom and gloom is being told something that's not true, that you can't do later.
Right. Well, there's a lot of
hardship that someone can go through buying a house with that. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
There's a huge element of trust that's involved in a real estate transaction. I mean, it's the biggest purchase of most people's life. And whether it's right or wrong, there is typically a lot of trust established with the broker, with the real estate broker, and with a lender, and to a lesser degree, the title company. So I think what you're talking about is just being realistic, and to say, yeah, just that date the rate thing, just it's like fingernails on the blackboard when I hear that. So don't say it anymore. but
buyers
I would
have
show you.
been misled, Paul, and excuse me for interrupting, but they have been misled.
Well, I think I also made some slides of a history of mortgage rates, a history of treasury rates, both recent and longer term. And I want to point to that because where rates are right now, that's a recent shot. That's like that's maybe a 1 day shot of the 10-year treasury. That one's you can kind of throw that away. That one's not really out there. That's just last few days. That's the 10-year for the last I can't tell how that one goes back, about maybe 30 days or so. I think I have them named. I thought I have them named. But anyway, if you that one's a year. That's a 1 year chart, and that shows the 10-year treasury, which again sort of mirrors where interest rates are. And you see that, rates, they're starting to come down a little bit if you look at the last 30, 60, 90 days. But there's another chart that's, I think, a little more illustrative, where it's not that one. Keep going. There's go one more.
Yeah, and I think the issue is, and I talked to somebody, and if
yes.
you guys are out there looking for real estate agents and you're looking for lenders, the unfortunate thing, I mean, is that there are a lot of people that are struggling to pay, that are in the industry that are struggling to pay their bills. And I was talking with an agent, and you've heard me, if you've listened to our podcast, you've heard me say it. I mean, if there are agents that are struggling, and I'm not going to talk about lenders, but I'm in the real estate agent business.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of agents out there that, the unfortunate thing about being commission based is that when someone needs to make their own mortgage payment, it's kind of hard for them to tell somebody that they shouldn't be, maybe they should be thinking about something else than what they're doing, or, advising them practically, or, I hate to use it honestly, but I mean, that's really what it is, because, somebody in a commission environment, unfortunately, may put their needs in front of their clients' needs. That's the issue that we have here. And I think a lot of people that are going through this buyer remorse, look, I can't stop a buyer from making a decision. And I'm not telling people don't buy houses. I'm not saying don't buy a house. But I am educating people as much as I can as to whether they're ready to buy a house. They have to make that ultimate decision. And if a buyer ignores all of the advice, because part of representing somebody is the ability to give them professional advice, professional opinion. I mean, that is what a contract to represent a client is. So if you're not a client of mine and you come to me to buy a house and you don't want to sign an agency agreement, I can't lie to you. I have to give you timeliness. I have to do all these things that the law says I have to do. I have to tell you material facts that I know if I have knowledge. But if I'm not representing you, the one thing I can't offer you is my professional opinion. So when agents are under contract as an agency relationship, a fiduciary relationships, it's their duty to provide professional opinion. And we have to have conversations. If the house it looks like a money pit, I have to say, guys, it looks like this house is going to cost you a lot of money to do these things. Not, oh, don't worry about that. I got a guy for that. It's not that bad. It's not going to be, nah, don't worry about it. We'll figure that out. If we ask for that, we're not going to get. I think when we're in Paul's business, telling people to date the rate is bad advice.
Yeah, I think there should be one twist in the phraseology, and it's you can refinance if rates come down, not when they come down, because the charts
And
I
if
sent,
you have $10,000,
well, you might not need it. I mean, it depends. We're presuming everybody in the world put 3.5% down, and some put more than that. And some have had houses for years where they have gained some equity based on a combination of paying the loan down and properties appreciating in value. And there's certainly been a lot of appreciation. So it is certainly possible to refinance, and it can be less than $7,000, but it is expensive, and you definitely want to consider all the implications of it and make sure that's the right decision for you and your family. But when I look at these charts, and you think, what do you mean when the rates come down, or do you mean if the rates come down? Because look at that. What rate are you saying you want to see? You want to see the rate under 4% that was artificial, like no other time in history when the Fed was buying mortgage backs? Oh, that'd be great. And if there's a QE 3 or 4, that might happen again. If that happens, yeah, it could be great. Confetti in the air, and everybody will be happy.
How about this? How about just tell them, you better be happy with the payment you're getting today, because you may not be able to refinance.
Word.
How about that for advice?
Word.
Well, what if I can refinance later? What if you can't?
Mm-hmm.
How about you're happy with the price today? And that price is even going to go up, because your insurance is guaranteed to go up every year. Your taxes are guaranteed to go up almost every year. I mean, I do see where some taxes are coming down. We witnessed it in the big financial crisis. But I think people need to understand prices are going up from here. This is a price that's going up from here. If it doesn't, hallelujah.
Mm-hmm.
But when we look at 7.77% as a 50-year, average of mortgage interest rates for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, it's easy to say. I mean, Paul, in 2006, I was helping people buy houses. They were happy to get 7%.
So the rate was 6 to 7% back then. That was in the
range.
Were happy
but
housing, with that. Housing prices back then were, pale compared to today. So that those low interest 100%. Rates for the 20, 21, 22 just fueled that fever that just had it pushed first time buyers out of the market, because with the escalations, they just couldn't do it, couldn't compete. And now I really think there has to be some softening in values. And because there's such light inventory, it's probably not going to happen fast, but I think it's got to happen. I think we're out of balance from you're familiar with the phrase equilibrium. I think the equilibrium's not right where we are right now. I think the housing values have got to soften, and it's going to take, but I think it's going to take a while. I just don't see it happening really, really fast.
I think if they drop interest rates, it's going to happen faster than you think. I mean, that's my prediction. I think we're going to see, here's the timing of the market. And look, I mean, everybody's going to be watching this closely, because we're going into, we're not miraculously, we're going to have a battle of the sides coming up, all three sides, because as I said, I know, Kennedy is now an independent, right? But we're going to have a battle going on here over the next 11 months, right? It's going to get massive. I mean, it's going to be, these guys are going to battle it out, right? And no one's going to want to see, stimulus right now. They're going to fight for it, right? They're going to make it just, the Republicans are going to, try and do what they can to, take over. The Democrats are going to try and do whatever they can to stay in, control. So we're going to watch this, happen right before our eyes over the next 11 months. And meanwhile, October, we started seeing a massive slowdown in business, not just real estate, a massive slowdown in business. We've got contractors calling me, they know I'm in the referral business, right? They know what I do for a living. I mean, I know contractors that are building houses, that are rehabbing houses, that are active in the industry, and everybody wants a job now, right? Where you couldn't find anybody a year and a half ago. Everybody was working. They were busy. Now contractors, these independents that are working as subcontractors, they are starting to feel massive collapse. I talked to a painter, had 25 employees. He has 2, right? These are real stories. I've said many times, a good buddy of mine's in the fencing industry. He's a supplier and he installs. He said, man, if I didn't have 2 jobs this month that just came out of the woodwork with people trying to eat up money at the end of the year, we would be completely tanked in business, like lights out, right? We're talking, this is happening. You go to restaurants, you're seeing they're not busy. I went to the mall on Saturday. I parked in a parking garage not even 50 feet from the entrance to Nordstrom's, right? At 11 o'clock, right? I mean, we're talking, the writing is on the wall here. We're going into this. You think dropping interest rates is going to all of a sudden make people have this epiphany that they're in a great position financially. We're looking at CPI still high, far from 2%. We probably, I think Powell even said we may never hit, if we ever hit it. I think he said 2 meetings ago. I don't know. I think we need to we have to be careful. All industries that are in the markets, real estate's one of the largest markets in the United States. You've got the stock market, you have the real estate market. I mean, this is something we have to watch closely. I think that people need to use their heads, think wisely, make decisions accordingly. I think that the push people into these articles, run out and refinance or run out, the rates drop the point. You better get it while it's hot. I think people are smart. We started out saying, are people smarter now? I think people are smarter just because they have more data to look at. They have more data. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Anyway, any of these charts before we sign off that we haven't covered, Paul?
Yeah, that's I think the 50-year chart, and that one we talked about. Same one. You can just probably close those. I thought I named them. That's that's a multi-page chart. That just takes a look at I think the history of interest rates.
Well, while he's cruising through that, Melissa, we have any other questions for Paul?
Yeah, there are. I want to get this super chat. We might not see a correction because the government always chooses currency devaluation over market correction. The lag on stimulus to manifest as inflation gives politicians plausible deniability.
Oh, man. You have some very astute subscribers.
Man, look, our
that's very well
audience
said.
is smart,
Yeah,
man.
great.
Our audience look, you read our comments on our channel, ladies
I
and
do.
gentlemen.
I
I mean,
do.
you guys are stellar. You're the best audience anybody can have, podcasting. I love you guys so much. I mean, this is.
David says it right here. I mean, in 2020 and 2021, we started paying people to stay home from work. We paid people to not work. And then we were given $2,000 stimulus checks to everybody who was under a certain income limit. And then, so all this money gets printed and the money supply goes berserk. And then we wonder why there's inflation and why there's labor shortages, because nobody wants to work. Now that's finally starting to kind of flush out, but David says it. He said it perfectly.
We got another question here. Does a lender even look at the PTI being at 28% anymore? What's your new percentage that's the top of the limit you would lend to for a mortgage, and why? Do you think it's a great idea lending?
That's another great question. 28% they're referring to is the mortgage expense. Back in the day when I first started doing this, for a 5% down conventional loan, the guidelines for ratios were 25% maximum payment and 33% maximum debt. Well, we've moved kind of way off that. Does a lender look at the front ratio? Yes, but the debt ratio is, I think they put a lot more emphasis on, and some cases that's justified. I could say some cases I've met clients that shouldn't even go over 20%. Because they don't know how to spend money. Money burns a hole in their pocket. So it's really different for everybody. And fortunately or unfortunately, guidelines that FHA subscribes to, guidelines that Fannie Mae issues, they're kind of written for the masses. They have to be. It's just how you can only have so much flexibility. But I would tell you that I've seen, 43% was a ratio that was established a few years ago to be considered a qualified mortgage. That there's a phrase called ATR, acronyms ATR, ability to repay. Lenders have to take that in consideration. So we have to look at, can the client afford to make this payment? And if we approve somebody that really can't, well, the lender's taking a lot of risk because they might not be able to foreclose. That's a risk the lender can take if they don't pay attention to those qualified mortgage guidelines. Anyway, our debt ratio limit at my bank, at Orstown Bank, is 43%. And can we exceed that? Yes, but it's an exception unless, I think this will make sense to anybody who's, if someone's ratio is 44% or 45% or 46%, well, in some cases that's a housing expense for a house they're going to be selling, but maybe they might be non-contingent. So they're going to sell the house later. We know that that's going to go away. That gives us some room to extend the ratio. And another thing we could use to consider kind of an offsetting factor is if someone's got a lot of cash reserves. So, and also their down payments 20% or better. So if someone's putting a 5% down or whatever, yeah, we're not getting really too creative, and we're not going to be extra liberal in the, help close more sales. That's not the word.
If those, very qualified borrowers had the cash, they certainly they'd be using it. They wouldn't be doing 7.5% 30-year fixed rate mortgages, right? I mean, they would be putting their cash to work for them. So, I think, that's you see a lot of people doing that.
Sorry, do I see a lot of people doing what?
Putting down a lot of cash.
Oh,
you see people putting 20% down?
Most of my clients do.
Yeah.
At least the last couple of years, because consider what's the real estate market has been like with escalations, and the people that are looking to put 5% down
about
can't even
right
get a
now?
contract considered.
How about right now?
Right now.
Yeah, you see people putting 20% down right now in the last 6 months. Yeah.
Yes.
What percentage of your borrowers, and how many of them have you
Probably
done in the
half.
last month?
Probably
Yeah.
half.
Out of how many in the last month, if you don't mind me asking?
Just a few. This has been a
2?
very, very down year.
Okay. So 1 out of 2 borrowers, the other borrowers can't even buy.
Maybe 2 out of 4.
The only
3 out
ones
of
with
6.
money. Right. So the only ones with money are buying. They're the only ones buying. Yeah.
Yeah, there are very few this year, very few low down payment clients.
I'm not trying to beat you up, man. I'm just trying to keep
No, I
it
know you're
real
not trying to
because,
bust my chops,
I mean,
but-
it's like, we gotta, when people hear most borrowers are putting, and then they hear only 3, and, then they don't feel as bad because they're not in a position to A, afford a house right now, and B, they don't have any money because they're just, average income earners, the bulk of America, and they're getting whacked in everywhere they turn. I mean, going to the grocery store, they say, well, gas has come down, but electricity has gone up. So it's just like, we'll shuffle it around and make these people think that things are getting so much better. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, look, I know it's late, but I love you. As challenging as I am with Paul here, man, we're great friends, and he's a great guy. And if you're looking for a mortgage, give him a call. I mean, he's going to be a straight shooter with you. He's going to point you in the right direction. He has, a wealth of knowledge, as you guys can see. Anything else, Melissa, we want to cover before we wrap up here tonight?
Well, there's a lot that we didn't get to, but
Man, we could
okay.
make these 3-hour podcasts. I don't know. You'd have to start toasting
close to that.
shots of Red Bull.
Yeah, but we will have the Q&A session later this week, and you'll be reviewing some of the questions at that point in time. So, but no, really great show. Paul, thank you so much for being on with us this evening.
Absolutely. If any listeners have any other questions, feel free to send them through the channel. There's, I think there's a link there somewhere. Or just leave them with Melissa, and I'll respond.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much. We love you. Keep those comments and questions coming. Don't forget, share us with your friends. Let's elevate this thing to get this message out to as many people as we can. That, hey, guys, if you're looking in the real estate, you want to buy a house, you want to know whether it's a good time or not. We're not going to tell you not to buy, but we're going to try and bring you the facts, bring you the details. We're going to uncover it for you so that you have all of the information at your fingertips that you can make the most educated decision when buying or selling. Have a great night, guys, and we'll see you next time.
We'll see you next
long, everybody.
time.